Hello again, this is Q from How To with Q, and I'm from QC Consigns. Thank you for coming back and joining us for part 2 of our segment of how to measure and evaluate the conditions of your product before listing it. So if you stuck around and you started this journey with us, thank you so much. If you didn't get to see the first part, we definitely encourage you to watch the first part of this video where we show you how to measure several items or product items before listing them. The second part that we're going to show you is how to look at those same items we measured condition. I think it's really important that we be very open and extremely honest with our buyers. And I am not here to say that resellers are not always honest. I think we all try to be as honest as possible. And I think we all try to make sure that we find errors on the garments or flaws on the garments. And here at QC Consigns, we like to call them pre-loved identifiers. Okay, so let's talk about that. Let's go on ahead and get started. So let me start with the pant bottom. We won't be needing our how to measure tools, so I'm going to get those out of the way. But when we are looking at the actual condition of a garment, I want to definitely encourage you to do what I advised you to do in the first part, which is make sure you're in a well-lit area or room, whether it be with natural lighting or whether it be with overhead bright lights, or maybe you have a spotlight that you can shine down on the garment. And the reason why you want to do that is because your goal is to catch any flaw possible. So when I have something like maybe this pant, I want to I call them zones. So from the top edge of the waist to the bottom right about where the thigh is, I call that zone A. Then from the bottom or the thigh down to the leg opening on a pant, I call that zone B. Then I'll turn the pant over at the top of the back panel. I call that zone C. And then again, the back of the leg, I call that zone D. And we have documents here, paperwork, that will show a basic illustration of a pant, and it will have a few lines off to the side where you put your pre-love of flaws found in zones A, B, C, and D. That is then with the garment handed to the listing agent here at QC Consigns. And that listing agent will take that information and plug that information into the listing. So we like to look at our garments 3 different times from a quality control perspective for condition. The first time that we look at a garment for the condition of that garment is to determine if we're going to contract that garment for resale, meaning are we going to take that in and make it our responsibility to sell for our consignment client. So we will do a once over to make sure there aren't any serious flaws that we can't speak to, we can't remedy before resale or things of that nature. That is the first time that that garment or that item, may be looked at for conditions. The second time the item is looked at for its proper condition is when it is being prepped to be photographed for the listing. You will be surprised what you will find under the lens. So when you're taking that photograph, Don't just be looking at capturing that best picture possible, but that photograph is going to tell you exactly what your buyer sees. So if there's a spotlight that's shining a shadow that makes it look like it's a dirt mark on a garment or an item, retake the photo. But also check your garment to make sure you truly do not have what we sometimes refer to as an invisible spot on your item. An invisible spot is sometimes something that you don't always see with a naked eye. But if you get it into certain lighting, you may be able to find it. Maybe it's an oil or a grease spot. Maybe it's something that came from the wash. I don't know. But you want to make sure whatever you captured in that lens isn't for real on that garment. So that is the second time we will evaluate the garment for condition or make sure we look out for any flaws or pre-loves. The last time that we actually will look at that garment, again, for its condition is its final moments before it is getting ready to be listed. It will then be re-looked at by our quality control team for item flaws. And I know to you that seems excessive, but that works for us. And what that has done is that has decreased the amount of returns that we have because we didn't capture something in its conditions. I can't tell you how horrible we feel when a buyer says to us that an item, I don't know, is not what we said it was going to be in its condition, because it is truly a part of our brand name, QC Consigns, where customer service and quality meets. So how can we deliver on the quality if we're not capturing the pre-love or pre-flaws that are on the item? So again, when that item comes back from being photographed, before it is sent to the listing agent, it gets a once-over one more time with the document I expressed to you earlier that talks about the zones of that item, where that quality control person gets to write down all of the flaws, and then that is passed to the listing agent. Now, the listing agent's responsibility is not to look at the garment or the item for quality issues. But we do encourage our listing agents, as they're writing the garment up or the item up, listing up, if they see something, call it out, especially if they don't see it on the zone sheet. Okay, so enough said about that. Let's take this garment for instance. The first thing you want to do when you get a garment is you want to just take the once over and you want to look in the different zones, A and B, and you want to look at the garment from top to bottom. And I mean, you really want to look at it. And when you're doing this exercise, you want to make sure you're well rested. You're not doing this after a hard day of work. And I know that's easier said than done, but many of us, this is kind of our second kind of income, and we're at a 9 to 5 all day. And we may not have a quality control team doing it, and we're doing it ourselves. And this is kind of what we're teaching, so you learn how to do it yourself. But you want to definitely make sure you're not exhausted when you're doing this, because you're not going to catch everything. And then you want to open the garment up. So if it has a zipper or fly, you want to make sure the zipper is functioning, and you want to kind of roll that zipper more than once. And it should easily go up and down. The zipper pull, this little metal thing here, shouldn't pop off when you're doing it. And we like to do that maybe about 5 or 6 times. Then you want to make sure the button stays buttoned, or the snap stays snapped. Sometimes they don't, right? If it has belt loops, you just want to tug a little bit on each of the belt loops and make sure there's no weakness in the threads that's holding the belt loops that will cause the belt loop to pull right off as soon as the buyer pulls the garment up on them with the belt loops, which most of us tug our garments with our belt loops. You want to check if there's pockets. You want to pull the pocket bags out. Make sure there's no dirt on the bags. Or sometimes I found receipts. I found people's vitamins. I've found money and some of our clients' stuff, and we return it. We don't keep those things. We'll let them know that we found cash in their item, to be honest with you. And you want to do that on both pockets, right? You want to make sure there's no holes in the pocket. So put your hand in the pocket just as if you were wearing the garment, and make sure you get to the corners of the pocket bag. You want to pull that bag out. You want to make sure there's no discoloration or any kind of dirt or funky stuff on the bag or holes. If there are back pockets, you want to do the same thing. You want to just put your hand in the pocket, make sure the pockets are empty, there's nothing in there, they look good. Okay, then you want to turn that garment inside out. And I know that sounds crazy, but you'd be surprised. So many of us only look at the outside of the garment and never turn the garment inside out. Turn that garment inside out. Remember, these are pre-owned, pre-loved items that you are reselling to someone else. And although that new buyer or new potential owner may be purchasing a pre-owned item, and maybe in your mind you're saying to yourself, well, they know they're buying a pre-owned item, there's going to be, there could be some flaws. They just want to be made aware ahead of time so that they can make the best decision possible. So you want to make sure you let them know everything that's going on that item before they get to it. So turn your garment inside out. And again, you want to look at it in the same zone way that you would have looked at it when you had it right side out. Okay? Look at your garment label. See what it says, because you'll need that information. So if you've got a size label, look at it. Make sure you're putting the right size down in the listing. Some listings require that you put fabric content. The fabric content of this garment is 97% cotton, 3% elastane. Okay, that means it has some stretch, some stretch to it. That's where the elastane comes in. Okay, so that means it's got little elastic yarns that have been woven into this fabric to give it a little bit of give, a little bit of stretch. All right. The type of garment is a woven garment, right? So it's not a knit. A knit is something really, really stretchy. So like on this shirt, this rib is a knit. This pant is a woven. Okay? So if your buyer asks, are those pants stretchy? Yes, they have 3% elastane in them. Or no, they're 100% cotton. Make sense? All right, once you've done that, turn the garment inside out. You've looked at your labels. Sometimes, especially with some of these pant bottoms or jeans, denim, they'll have little names on them. So this one is the Everett. It's called a Slim Straight. So this is an AG, which is the brand name. This is an AG men's pant. This is the Everett pant by AG, and it's a slim, straight fit. And it is a woven pant made from 90% cotton and 3% elastane. That's how you would want to write your listing. It has certain flaws. So I can tell you, when I get up on this garment, I can see certain flaws. And I want to capture those flaws in my listing and when I photograph it. So I'm going to come around the table and I'm going to show you. This pant has blue ink mark. Now I can do one of two things with this pant. I can pre-wash it to see if I can get that blue stain out. Or if I can't, and I still think the pant is worth purchasing and listing, I will then tell my buyer that this pant has a blue stain that is unable to get out at the front waistband area. I'll take a snapshot of that, and I may even say in my listing, please review the last one or the last two photos in the listing photo library showing you the size of the stain as well as where the stain is located. Sometimes if you want to, and I was looking around to see what I had, but sometimes if you want to give a buyer just kind of a gauge of how large a stain is, you can put a penny next to it, you can put a dime next to it, you can just show them that's kind of in relations to the item what that stain size is. Okay, enough about that. Perfect. All right. So, again, this is a top, but the idea still remains the same. I want to look at my top and look at my zones of my top. This is a lace garment. You see that? It's lace. That means it naturally has holes and cutouts. But I want to run my hand through this garment, and I want to make sure that there aren't any other types of holes that's not a part of the lace detail. Okay? Now, if you wanted to, because this is a fairly dark garment, right? It's a black garment and it's black lace. It naturally has some holes. If, rolling your hand through it to kind of see, you could also look at this over light. If you took the lampshade off of a lamp and looked at it over light, you could also see holes. You can do that as well with your sweaters. Same concept. So that's why we kept this one out, because it has lace and naturally has holes, and you want to make sure it doesn't have additional holes that it shouldn't have, even if it's new with tags. Okay? Sometimes our consignment clients don't always realize that their item may be damaged. All right? So in this case, if it was something that was not repairable, we would then let our consignment client know that this does not fall within our standards of quality, and unfortunately, we would not be able to sell or contract the item with them. All right. Okay. Then we have this skirt. So this skirt is fairly simple, but we kept this one around to look at quality from the perspective of we've got all these little pretty fringes. And we want to make sure these fringes are still attached to the garment. Nothing's falling off, ripping off, or partially coming off. And we just want to give a light tug to make sure there are no issues. Now, this is kind of like a very drapey, suede-y type fabric. So it has what we call a nap. That means there's a surface that's brushed on the top layer of the piece goods or the fabric. And if you brush it up, it takes on a different color or shade than when you brush it down. That's called nap up, nap down. So you'll either get a little bit more sheen or it becomes a little bit more duller depending on if you brush the nap up or brush the nap down. Now, why am I sharing this with you? Because in suede garments like corduroy, like moleskin, like suede, nubuck, those will tend to have shaded areas as a result to the flex in the fabric where maybe your hand or something brushed up against it and it just pulled the nap up and it's showing a darker surface. So you just want to brush your hand back across that area to just make sure that shade that you see or that dark spot you see is not truly a stain and it's just indicative of what the fabric is doing. I hope that makes a lot of sense to you. In this case, it has a side zip. So like our pant zipper, we want to zip this up, zip this down, zip this up, zip this down. You want to do that 3 to 5 times or so. Again, making sure you have no issues. Okay? Fabulous. The next item I'm going to show you here is a handbag. We use this bag in our how to measure, so we'll use this again in our quality. This bag is a brand new bag, never used. I mean, literally tags are still on it. Tags are still the way they came out of the store. But this bag has flaws. And although it's a new item, we have to list it new with defects. And that's sad because that devalues the price point of this item. This item retailed at $1,000. And although we probably would love to be able to get this bag sold for about $800, we would probably have to decrease that sale to about $600 or $700 because of the defects, although it is new with tags. I even had a buyer ask me, well, how does that happen? Easy. If the client who owned the bag didn't store the bag properly, doesn't have a bag sack for it, it happens. Things happen. Nonetheless, when you are looking at a handbag, make sure you're looking at the inside of the bag. Make sure you're looking at the outside of the bag. Make sure you're pulling on the straps if they are attached to the bag. If they are not, maybe it's a strap that detaches. Make sure the clamp or the hook that detaches it to the bag, detaches the strap to the bag, works and doesn't fall apart in the buyer's hands, because you know that'll happen. Soon as they get the handbag, it'll fall apart in their hands and it would have never done it in yours, right? Murphy's Law. Look at your item very closely, even if it means getting your cell phone light and just really looking at your item. A lot of times bags that don't have metal feet, and you've heard me talk about this on Wind Down Friday, which is why I love metal feet on bags. It protects these bottom corners of the bag. In this case, this bag has a double whammy. It does not have a bag sack to protect it. It also doesn't have metal feet. So that means the bottom corners of this bag is going to be more susceptible to getting damaged, and that is what has happened. That the bottom corners of these bags this bag is showing some slight wear. I'm going to come around so you can see it. Can you see that? The bottom corner right there has some wear. So we've got to let our buyer know this. It is very, very, very important that we let our buyer know that. Now, with luxury handbags like this and many others, these bags have different codes, okay? So when you are listing a luxury item, specifically a handbag or a luxury shoe, they have serial numbers, they have other identifiers that allow you to authenticate the bag. Now for QC Consigns, we do our quick authentication in-house. But then we hire a third party to certify and authenticate our resale items for us. And we give an authentication certificate from the real authentication company to that buyer. That costs us roughly about anywhere from $50 to $75 a certificate. So when you're thinking about selling luxury items, there's a price to pay to do that. It is not all profit. So you may see us sell a $3,000 bag, but that's not $3,000 in our pocket. And one day we'll talk about pricing structure. But with that $3,000, we've got to give 60% of that sale to our consignment client. We keep 40%. But in that 40% comes out our authentication fees, which is again, anywhere from $50 to $75. Then with luxury items, we ship them via UPS, and we ship them with a signature and fully insured. That may cost us, depending on where it's going, anywhere from another $25 to $45. Before you know it, you're out almost $100 of your profit just in authenticating a luxury item and then making sure it gets to the buyer safely and on time. So I know that's not what this segment is about, but I digress and I wanted to share that with you. So when you're selling luxury items and you're inspecting them for their condition, you're also looking for authentication codes, whether it be a serial number inside the bag specifically located for that designer and where that designer puts it, or certain other things like a made in Italy, made in Paris, that insignia, where is it located, how is it branded? All of those things are extremely important in bags like this. Sometimes, and not all the time, do you have proof of its authentication with the actual hang tag still attached to the garment from the sale, from the store. And in this case, I believe this one does, yeah. So this one still has the barcodes and everything on there. So that should be authentication enough, but our motto is that we will provide you a certificate as well. So there you have it. That is how you would look at a bag. And again, if it has different locks and trims, like this does, it's got metal pieces, trims to it, look at the trim. Make sure the trim is still shiny. If it's not, it's dull, it's discolored, list that in your conditions, okay? This bag is reversible. Turn the bag inside out. Make sure when you turn it inside out, you don't have a problem. That is so important for a bag like this. Now I'm going to show you, I'm going to bring in, we have a consignment client that has decided to consign her Boulevard watch. When you are taking in, whether you're thrifting and you find it, or like us, we don't thrift, we have nothing against it. Kudos to those that can do it. We don't have the patience or the time to deal with it. But if you are taking in jewelry items, this is going to be key. And you don't know what you're taking in, but you think it may be precious or maybe not, have a third party look at it. Befriend a jeweler in the neighborhood and see if he or she will help you. Just give verbal identifiers on what it is. Have them look at the condition of the item to make sure the links are right, to make sure the inner workings are right. Also to authenticate your item and make sure it's real. Don't get a Rolex, take it for granted that it's a real Rolex, sell it to your buyer takes it to his or her jeweler, and whammy, you find out then that it's a fake, okay? So definitely take it to your jeweler. In this case, we don't need to do that. It's a Boulevard. It doesn't resell for very much. It doesn't even retail for a whole lot, but it's definitely worth something to our consignment client, and it'll be worth something to the buyer that buys it. With that said, like in this case, if it has diamonds, you want to make sure every diamond is accounted for. So you want to count, you want to look. Get your magnifying glass out. This is where your magnifying glass is going to come in. Remember, I told you that's one of the tools that you want to have with you. You want to look and see if there are scratches due to normal wear on the metal. You want to look underneath to see all of the codes, if there are any. And then if the watch comes to you working, that's great. But here is something as caution. If I were you, I would state that a battery may be needed at the time of purchase, because you do not know when you are going to sell that watch. That watch may sit in your inventory for 6 months to a year, at which point the battery may be dead by the time it sells. And you don't want a disgruntled buyer to find out that not only did they not only just buy the watch, but now they've got to buy a battery. So please make sure you tell your buyer, battery may be needed at the time of purchase. Okay? There you have it. Okay, so that concludes How To with Q in this segment where we have taught you how to measure and how to look at your items' conditions for resale. Hopefully, we have touched on some areas, both in how to measure and how to look at garments and items for condition, working condition, to give your buyer the best advantage possible when purchasing your items, and to decrease your returns, and as well as raise your brownie points with the buying, reselling community, as well as getting you awesome reviews back from those buyers that have purchased your items. Listen, I am always, just in all of the things that I now have acquired and learned to know that people don't. So I encourage you that if there are things you want to know about how to list an item, what to say in your listing, what terminology to use, please reach out to us. Send us a message at the bottom of the screen here of our YouTube video, or DM us on our Facebook and or Instagram channels. In the meantime, we want to thank you so much for hanging out with me, Q, from QC Consigns, and our How To with Q. Take care. Bye-bye.